Welcome to the Data Leadership Lessons Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony J. Algman. Data is everywhere in our businesses, and it takes leadership to make the most of it. We bring you the people, stories, and lessons to help you become a data leader. Find subscription links and more resources to make an impact with data leadership at dataleadershiplessons.com. Today, we welcome Jerry Fu. Jerry is a conflict resolution coach who helps Asian American leaders advance in their career and life journeys. After several pharmacy leadership roles, Jerry started coaching in 2017 to help other Asian American professionals deal with the conflict they encounter at work with their culture and within themselves. Jerry, welcome to the show.
Hey, Anthony, thanks for having me.
So like we do with all our first-time guests, why don't you just take a moment, tell the audience a bit more about your career before becoming a coach and how it led you to doing what you do now?
Certainly, yeah. I knew I wanted to do something in healthcare when I started college, but when I got a C in organic chemistry, I knew I had to pivot quickly from my pre-med aspirations. And while, that wasn't an insurmountable thing at the time in my mind, I thought that was the death of my physician dreams. And so I said, well, let me do something else in healthcare. And what was available? Well, pharmacy was. And so I said, well, let me convince pharmacy school that I would make a good pharmacist. And at the time, jobs were in high demand. Salaries were starting to scale up pretty quickly. And so I thought, I picked a good time to ride this wave. And so my mom and I slightly disagreed on the path that I should take in pharmacy. It wasn't that it was that different, but she felt one chain pharmacy was better than another. And so due to my own conflict aversion, I just basically went with her recommendation and was not happy with it. But at one point I became complacent and I had some nice things while I was working there. And so I held on to it as best I could. But after about 5 years, when I had a really bad customer service incident, I just said, nope, I've had enough. I need to find something else. And so part of what you can see is building up here, right, is that the customer service aspect in pharmacy or in chain pharmacy specifically kind of leaves you unsatisfied or resentful after you've dealt with enough difficult patients or customers, right? They say it doesn't matter, how unfair or how unreasonable their stance is. We need them to be paying customers. So we just kind of need you to, kind of dampen it down a little bit. I said, okay, this isn't going to work long term. So
can I ask you one thing? I want to ask you one thing about that in particular. So I imagine that people that are drawn to doing pharmacy work often are thinking about that kind of scientific side of it, that medical side of it, where you're thinking about dispensing the medications, understanding the medications. It reminds me of when right out of college, I became a stockbroker because I loved the financial analyst side of it. And I loved thinking about stocks and I liked connecting it to people's recommendations or whatever. But I quickly learned that being a stockbroker was a sales job. It was all about people. It mattered way less how well you analyzed the securities and way more how you interacted with your customers or potential customers and your people or whatever. And it sounds to me like what you found in pharmacy was the same kind of situation where like your focus was over here, like this is why I'm doing this work. But then you found the reality of it was it's a customer service position as much as it is anything. And that completely overwhelms any of the rest of the experience. Am I reading that right? Is that a fair parallel?
Oh, that's absolutely the case. Part of it is, you have to build relationships regardless of whatever profession you choose, right? Whether you're an accountant or a stockbroker or a pharmacist or a physician or an engineer, anything like that, right? You have to manage your relationships well. Right. Whether it's your team or customers or clients, things like that. And at the same time, if you love data and you want to focus on it, get a research job, where people leave you alone, right? They say, oh, well, he's the technical expert. We're just going to give him a couple guidelines and then get out of his way. But, for a retail job, which is very visible in the community, right? Relationships are inevitable. And the funny and sad thing is that in these retail pharmacies, you're basically giving away your clinical knowledge for free, right? If you call me and ask me a drug question and I tell you, and you say, hey, thanks, Jerry, click, right? I didn't get paid for any of that. So now I have to upsell gummy bears and batteries just to, offset the fact that I'm giving clinical knowledge for free. So not a great business model if you're going to want to get paid to give clinical knowledge, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, all that to say, so I leveraged my network because I wanted to get into teaching pharmacy students, but I didn't have a residency or a PhD because I wasn't working on my career in pharmacy. So leveraged the network. A friend of mine who worked for a pharmacy consulting company here in Houston said, hey, we have an open position since I got promoted. Do you want to apply for it? I said, absolutely. So I walk away from a full-time job with benefits and just earned the 3rd week of vacation. And I said, nope, doesn't matter. The other 49 still stink. I don't want to be around here. Yeah. So I take this job hoping that this would be the last company I would ever have to work for. And I know how jealous a lot of my friends were when they found out that I was given this opportunity, just kind of gift wrapped to me. Yeah. I still had to convince them I was worth taking a chance on. But, anyway, 11 months later, I get fired. And it's like, oh, what do I do now? Right. The shame and the embarrassment, everyone's going to be asking questions, right? The simple answer is that I like the idea of being an instructor more than actually doing the work of becoming an instructor. Mm-hmm. A big challenge was the fact that in my chain pharmacy job, as long as I was doing a better job than like 70 or 75% of the workforce, and I knew some really incompetent pharmacists, that were on the payroll. And as I said, well, as long as I'm better than 75%, my boss will be fine with me. But now in this smaller company, I'm being held accountable to the position I was hired to do. And I learned quickly that your boss is not paying you to give them stories as to why you didn't get the job done. Boss is paying you to get the job done, right. And I didn't. So it wasn't love. It didn't feel loving at the time. It was very painful, but it really was, the wake-up call I needed to recognize that, hey, whatever I was thinking or doing was not going to work. That's when the roller coaster got really weird. After about 6 weeks of unemployment, I managed to find my way into a job, very naive at this point as to what kind of, shady things are going on in Houston. I ended up at an independent pharmacy job where 4 of my paychecks bounced while I was filling for crooked doctors. Oh. So double whammy, I'm jeopardizing my license and this guy's ripping me off. Like I'm not even getting paid. So in my conflict aversion, right, in the same way I was afraid to deal with a boss who's upset with me. Now I have a boss who's ripping me off and I have no idea how to confront him, right? I'm frustrated, I'm anxious because the only way I even have a chance of getting paid is if I move more shady prescriptions, right? And so thankfully my friends got me out of that job after about 9 months and then got me on with a legitimate company. But they said, hey, we like you, but we can't pay you more than 8 hours a week. So I said, okay, so rent or groceries this month. I just don't know which one to go with. I end up working for them out in Austin, which is about 2.5 hours away from Houston, just to get more hours. And now I have no idea what my life is going to look like. So that summer was very pivotal because some friends of mine who run a pharmacy leadership nonprofit said, hey, we know you've been facilitating leaderships on the fraternity side, but leadership spot opened up for our national meeting. Would you be willing to help facilitate this workshop with us? And I said, absolutely. And so teaching leadership kind of unlocked some different thinking in me in that before I said, oh, leadership is hard. The times I tried it, I wasn't good at it. I don't know if I'll ever be good at it. But now, after teaching it and seeing it modeled for me, I said, well, what if I could be a good leader? What would that look like? How would I carry myself? What kind of work would that involve? And so that fall, I had the chance to either stay part-time in Austin which was a great team, or take on a full-time manager position that had opened up in Houston. And I said, well, I'm ready to come home. I can't be afraid of these challenges. I'm going to take this on. The following year, I proceeded to get written up by management because I was not disciplining or firing problematic technicians, because this ongoing theme of conflict aversion. Oh, I want to be liked. I want to be respected, which is two actually exclusive things. You can't be liked and respected. It was very hard to balance the two. Right. And so got in the doghouse, had to figure my way out, managed to get myself, off probation right as the company had their funding pulled. Basically, the owners at that point had decided that the business model we were investing in was no longer sustainable, so they decided to move on. And the only reason I got an interview with my next company was that I had leadership experience on my resume now. And I said, wow, leadership really saved my career. First, my friends were kind enough to give me a fish to help kind of get me out of this chain pharmacy complacency. And now I'm being taught to fish. And so now, I can actually get the attention of other companies. Unfortunately, with these smaller pharmacy jobs that actually offer a good quality of life, they don't last very long. I call them icebergs. So it's nice that I have more icebergs to hop to, but they're still melting. And so 4 years ago, when my previous employer went under, I said, well, I'm tired of fighting insurance companies and tired of chasing scripts, but I love teaching these leadership workshops, which I'd consistently done since 2012 when I first started. What would a career in coaching look like? What kind of work would that involve? And so still scared to fail, still scared of rejection. Some friends were kind enough to hire me, so it was kind of like a hobby at this point. And it took a pandemic, right, for me to finally say, how much longer am I going to wait? Last October, I filed the LLC, got the website up, and now it's just try, struggle, fail until I can transition out of my day job.
Yeah, well, and this is a story that aspects to, like, I'm not in the pharmacy space, but aspects to this really resonate with me, and I'm sure resonate with a lot of the audience out there, is that, you've been through some rough stuff, some bad luck, some self-imposed challenges, some, opportunities to learn about your own weaknesses or proclivities. And I appreciate you being open and sharing that with us. And then having the courage to keep getting off that mat when you're beaten down, and then find the courage to take a even bolder step into going into coaching and finding this thing. It reminds me, like, I've long said, because I've been doing data work and data management work pretty much my whole career, pretty much since I quit being a stockbroker. And it was, and that only lasted like 6 months. I got the certifications and then quickly realized what I had done and got out of it. But data and different aspects of it, technology and all that, called to me early on. And at one point, it was probably about, at this point, it's probably like 7-8 years ago, I said to myself, and I was doing conference speaking, and I'd had a chief data officer role, and I'd been keynoting things and stuff, and I'm like, this has been such a wild journey through these different positions. Did programming stuff, did consulting, had opportunities to lead. And I'm like, what are the chances that I ended up doing this stuff? And it got me thinking, and I'm like, the more I think about it, the more I realize that this life, this role, this thing that I'm doing has been calling to me for my entire life. And I remembered back in even high school, I didn't know about data management or data leadership careers. I didn't know, but I knew that I'm like, I want to do something that I can be respected in. I want to do something where I can be leading things, that I want to be a knowledgeable person in my area. And I want to be completely anonymous outside of it. Like, I am never going to threaten Joe Rogan for podcast listeners, because this is not that kind of show, right? Like, and that's okay, because the audience I want to reach is hopefully a deeper connection, a more specific connection. And when I think about it, I'm like, what are the chances that I would end up doing this? I'm like, the more I think about it, it's like, it's 100%. It is 100% that I was going to end up doing something like this. Now, the details, that's all crazy random or whatever. But every time I made a new choice, it pulled me in this direction to take, to address something that wasn't right before. And it's, for me, I knew functionally pretty early in my career, like, this is what I do. This is what my life's work is about. This is who I am. For me, it's always been context. It's always been like, I don't know if I should be doing this on the industry side and the consulting side, as an entrepreneur, as a content creator, whatever, or some combination of them all. But to know what you do and to have that calling, to listen to it, like, to me, that's what's so exciting about hearing your journey, is that this has been calling to you, and you have taken different steps towards it. And now you're at this point where you're like, yes, this has come together to now I feel that this is what I was always supposed to do. And now I'm here. So that I wanted to share that, because that's how I relate to this. And I imagine that others will. And it's so sad that I think most people never find that true passion of what their life's work is about. So can you tell me more about how that dawned on you, and how, as you started to like leap in all in, which I have a tremendous respect for, because I think that's the only way to do. If you're found your life's work and you don't jump in 100%, then you're hitting yourself in a new way, right? So you saw that, you're like, Coach, how did you figure out what that context was for you and how you wanted to create a business around that? Talk me through that that experience for you.
Yeah. There's this great book called Designing Your Life by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. And one of the best things about that book was they basically said, if you're going to approach your life with a design mentality, then you recognize that the important pillars of life, which include work, love, play, and health, right? These are iterative, and you have to evaluate these on a continual basis, because what worked for you 5 years ago probably isn't working for you now, right? And then what's working for you now may not work for you 5 years from now. And to be able to recognize that and continue to experiment and, involve friends, right, in the process. Hey, check my blind spots, things like that. And so that really helped me, because I would notice along my journey, right, what made me feel alive, right? One of the things that they ask you to do is to keep a good times journal. Hey, what makes you feel alive? Oh, I really have fun when I go salsa dancing, right? It's like, oh, this makes me feel alive. Or when I'm cooking for friends and I have a meal together with them and we're having meaningful conversation, you know what? That's something I need to take a note of. And same thing with coaching. When I ask questions and I see clients kind of have that epiphany, and then not only do they have that epiphany, they act on it in a way that leads them to have this level of closure with, a temperamental boss, or, they're able to make some difficult but necessary decisions regarding their career. You start to realize, hey, you know what? I should have more of this, right? I need to find a way to cut out or minimize the things that I don't like, like admin paperwork or things like that, right? We can automate, invoicing, things like that, or we can hire someone else to do it if you have enough capital, right? And so when you realize, hey, let me start to, really be intentional about expanding what I love doing and, reducing what drags on me. It's not an evil or selfish thing. Really, we need people that are willing to find a way to focus on what makes them come alive so that they can better contribute for themselves and to the people around them that are important to them. And from there, not just strive for individual success, but to have significance that goes well beyond their life journey.
Right. So in your coaching, you have a specific emphasis on helping Asian American leaders and with some challenges that are unique to them. Can you talk about what those are and how you're targeting that community and helping them solve those problems?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. Yeah, great question. So I'll give an example just so people can kind of, we're not just talking in vague terms here. So one of my friends, when I was in college, one of my friends said, hey, this is during summer break. He's like, hey, I'm going to be in your area town. Do you want to hang out for a couple of days? And so I said, yeah, let me run it by my mom, make sure that everything's clear. And then, if she says yes, then come on over, hang out. And so this, my friend comes over, he hangs out for a couple of days. My mom is a kind and gracious host, and, we have a good time. And then, he leaves. And then not even like 2 hours after he left, my mom is like, can you believe this guy? Like, he didn't make the bed when he was done. He left hair in the shower. Like, I can't believe, you can have him over again, but I wouldn't recommend it. Right. And this is the method of conflict resolution that I grew up with. Yeah. Right. Oh, like, let them save face. We don't want to embarrass them, or, tell us we're ashamed of that our expectations might be unreasonable for them. So let's just keep that to ourselves. And then when they break them, we secretly just kind of write them off, and, they just don't come over again. Right. And we just get over whatever resentment that or frustration we have with enough time passing. Right. And so, but this is what I grew up with, right? And it was also layered on top of the fact that chain pharmacy is telling me, hey, like, if the patient's being unreasonable, like, just don't antagonize them further. And so to give clients and really groups of organizations that have Asians that, have this mentality, right? There's plenty of organizations say, every time we check in with like our Asian employees, we ask them if everything's going fine, and they always say yes. And then later we find out there's like some dumpster fire that they're hiding because they're too embarrassed, because they felt like the initial admittance that something is wrong would imply that they're incompetent. When really the worst problem is that they're not volunteer. They don't feel, bold enough to really volunteer this information, right? And so, for example, so one of my clients at one point, her boss called her after hours. She didn't pick up. He blew up at her the next day and, questioned her commitment, even though his expectations for the job were very vague. And so, she asked me, how do I handle this guy? Like, how do I address my frustration, but not risk getting fired because he's already lost his temper once? And so, to give her a framework, to tell her to say, hey, go ahead and organize your thoughts, write them down on paper, organize them, rehearse them, right? Don't just write them down on paper, rehearse them in the front of a mirror with friends who can role play with you, and then find 10 seconds of courage to say, hey, boss, do you have 10 minutes? I need your help trying to resolve something, right? And so to give them the courage to move forward with these conversations so that they can actually achieve closure and exhale and say, oh, I'm so glad I got that off my chest. That is what I hope for them.
Yeah, it is something that I think we often forget, is that a lot of our proclivities or our what we interpret as individual or personal like challenges or weaknesses aren't genetic in nature. They aren't, we weren't born with them, but we grew up because we were in an environment, or we learned a behavior, or we, had some particular struggle in our lives that resulted in this. And those are coachable, changeable things. And that's something that there are patterns and kind of cultural norms that can sometimes paint us into corners and make us, where it can be difficult for us to manage in a situation where the others around us find it very comfortable. And I think that's that can manifest in a lot of different ways. And I think you have focused in on an area and a pattern that is relevant to you, and as relevant to your clients. And I think that, for the audience out there, I think how many more kinds of patterns exist like that, or how many more challenges do we face that are like, hey, we have this hang up, or we have this challenge that's deep. Like, this is something that you don't just say, okay, I'm going to come to work and I'm going to be courageous today, and I'm going to address these issues. Like, that's not possible. You need some support. You need some sort of assistance in even evaluating that circumstance. And that's what I find is interesting from a coaching or consultative perspective, is that sometimes if you can just reframe the problem and structure an understanding of the problem, the solution becomes a much more straightforward process. Like, even in just what you described, I'm like, yeah, can I think of things in my own life that I'm like, I really struggle with this? Is it because I'm a bad person, or is it because I've learned something or have conditioned myself to say to myself, oh, I can't handle this situation well because I am blah? And that, I think, is something that it's gotten me thinking about that avenue. And I imagine that's something that you as a coach are dealing with constantly. Like, you're helping people understand and address some of those things that, even if they were completely thinking about it, completely looking in the mirror, they wouldn't even be able to see. Is that accurate? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I mean, it's funny with reframing, because it is one of the essential things in not just coaching, but lifestyle design. And you have to reframe wisely, right? You can't just say, well, it's really not the bigger problem, because that's what a lot of people do. Oh, I dealt with one organization where people were, showing up late, or they're flaking out on meetings. And when leadership brought this up, that people weren't all that committed to the group, and the response was, no, just lower your expectations. It's not the end of the world, right? That's not a good reframe, right? Yeah. Oh, it's not the big a deal, really. Just you'll live. And it's like, okay, no. But it is, because reframing, really the clue to reframing, right, is like, well, how can we see this differently? Like, even if we shift over the perspective by even 5 or 10 degrees, like what new things do we notice so that we can continue to work around this obstacle in such a way that we eventually get to the other side, even if it's not the original way we thought we were going to take. And yeah, when you reframe, like, it's like when I got fired, right? Initially, even as of about 6 or 7 years ago, I remember telling my friend that, getting fired had to be one of the worst things that ever happened to me. And he pauses for a second, and he goes, "Could you look at it as the best thing that's ever happened to you?" And it just kind of judo flipped the whole perspective. And I said, I guess I have to. What do I tell people now? It was the wake up call, right? It was the humbling moment. I needed to realize, hey, you know what? I need to grow. I need to reevaluate. I need to adapt. And, I tell people now, right? People get mad over things like with bad breakups or whatever else like that. And I just ask them, and I don't state the case, because as soon as I state the case, right, they'll start to push back and dig their heels in. But if I just say something like, what if this could be the best thing that ever happened to you? Mm-hmm. And I just let them kind of fill in their own, evidence to support their stance if they're willing to entertain that possibility.
Oh man. So you got me thinking. So I have this curse of being able to convince myself of anything. Like I have this ability to be able to take whatever my conclusion is. And and what it has occurred to me at times, and I think this is also relevant, kind of extending that whole notion of reframing. Mm-hmm. We as individuals there's a couple truths. We are not getting all the data. We don't have access to all the data. You think about work conflict, you think about different perspectives, you think about what's happening. We don't have all the data. We don't have all of it. And every piece of data that we do comes in through this subjective filter in our brains. And then then we get going. Then we start telling the narrative around it, and we piece it together, and we start spinning. And we can find ourselves pretty far removed from reality in our interpretation of the limited data that we are subjectively analyzing, to then come up with the conclusions that we are then over engineering in our minds. It helps to reorient that sometimes through an external perspective, certainly, but I would also argue it helps to get more data. It helps to get a better, more objective set of inputs wherever possible. I've even recently, I've misinterpreted scenarios because the data that I had was skewed as I learned by gathering more data, and my interpretation of it was not unreasonable, but was also incorrect because I had preconceived from certain data. I'd overweighted some of the relevance of that data in absence of other data, and led me to a conclusion that was just wildly wrong, the wrong conclusion and the wrong corresponding action. So I think it's an interesting thought around how we all encounter these kinds of situations, especially in careers, and especially where I've long said, nobody cares about you as much as you do. We are not the center of the universe, but we're the center of our universe. We are the most important person to us under most circumstances. Granted, family and all of that are very important, but you filter things through that personal lens. And I think having that kind of guidance, or even just ability to start thinking in different ways, however you can do that, is a worthwhile pursuit. But I want to bring up an example that is unusually. This is not something I've ever been able to do with another guest, but I'm going to use an example from this call. So as we got onto this call, I was 2 minutes late. And part of it was because I had a little bit of a technical issue getting on, but more of it was because I'm always 2 minutes late if I'm lucky these days. And I mentioned to you as we got on this call, I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm a couple minutes late. It's the story of my life these days, or whatever. And I hate it because I used to be punctual, and I used to be I would always be there. I would always be on time or whatever. And I am existing in an organizational culture that is not as punctual. And that's kind of our lives in the Zoom call world of COVID. We're always going right up to the top of the hour, and then it takes a little bit of time to connect to the next thing where we're running a few minutes late. But how do you reconcile it? Because and my solution up till now has just been throw up my arms and be like, I don't know what to do, versus is there a better way to address that? A healthier way to address that, where I know in the back of my mind, every time it happens, it hurts because I hate not being punctual, but I've also had to acknowledge, I don't know how to solve for that in reality. Is there a better way to process that versus just doing what I did on the call that we started a little while ago?
Anthony, your openness is wonderful. So thank you for allowing us to unpack this, because it depends really, because there's no one right solution. I'll give you a couple options to play around with, though, because punctuality is a huge, huge thing for me. And I was late for my 9 o'clock this morning by 2 minutes, and I knew. And plus, it was with an Asian coach, and I'm just like, oh, like this like unpardonable sin, right? Just a little late. I got my computer up late, and turns out it was a phone call that she registered for, so I didn't even have to get my computer up. I just need to zero in on the number, and my computer decided to upgrade everything while it was in standby. So all sorts of excuses, but you have a couple options here. So one example I'll give a couple, but one example I'll give is when we teach leadership workshops, we started to introduce the idea of what does the group want to own? Like, how do they want to make this theirs? What kind of like guidelines or rules do they want to establish for themselves? And they'll say things like, don't interrupt, keep your phone on silent, no judging, right? Things like that. And the couple that we always plant just to see if they, it's their choice to accept or reject it. Mm-hmm. One is punctuality. And we say, do you like starting on time? And they're like, well, yeah. And there's no one says no, right? And then we say, well, how do you want to define starting on time? Well, at the top of the hour, and then someone usually jumps in with, oh, we should have a 5-minute grace period, and then, that's fine. It's negotiable with the group as long, and because the group now has a say in it, there's more buy-in, right? Because it's not just me telling them, hey, you got to be on time, because people be like, yeah, I know, I guess you'd be on time. There's no ownership, right? Yeah. So if it's something the group agrees to, they're more likely to own it and support it. So that's one option you could take. The other is to incorporate some creative or fun penalties. So for one group, 1 year, they said, if you are late, and according to, if you are beyond the 5-minute grace period, you have to stand up and sing I'm a Little Teapot in front of the entire group. Right.
Nice.
And we always recommend songs with gestures because, just making them sing is kind of boring, but if they have to like do the dance and spin around in the circle, it's great. The other example that came to mind, though, was the band director in my middle school. At the top of the hour, he just locked the door. If you weren't there by the time he was supposed to start, he just locked the door, and you got a 0 for the day because you weren't there. Mm-hmm. I can guarantee you, when you shape that environment to engineer out that flaw, people may have resented it, but it still was very effective. So it's really up to you as to what kind of solution you think you would want to support, right? Because if you say, hey, I am a man of integrity, I want to keep this promise to myself, do I want to incorporate some fun rewards if I for every day that I honor it and I get on like this streak of like 10, 20 days where I am like there, not just on time at the top of the hour, but 5 minutes early? Sure. Or you could, have your computer shut down, and have some really get some money involved, right? Just like if I am not on time, today, then I have to donate $2,000 to like the charity that I hate, for a cause I don't believe in, right? And it's kind of funny how I would never engineer something like that for myself, but I do know that to trick myself forward in a way, right? Like when I ran my marathon, when I registered for it, I knew that if I could just like pay the $100-something, I knew I was going to back out because I said, nope, I paid the money. I'm going to let that sunk cost bias like move me forward. And it didn't matter how many people tried to talk me out of it. I said, nope, I committed to this. And I because nothing made me more upset than feeling like I didn't get my money's worth out of something. Right. So the question to ask yourself, in this situation is, what kind of solution would you respond best to? Do you need something where you kind of engineer out the flaw and don't even allow for, wiggle room? Or, do you need a nicer carrot to kind of reward you? Or do you need some public accountability with some real consequences? It's up to you.
Well, and it's a situation in my context that I realize I cannot control the fact that meetings are going to start late and go long in my organization. Okay. I'm just not going to be able to assert that kind of influence. But I think your point is well taken is that I can create a framework for my own actions in a way that says, okay, if we hit the top of the hour, don't care what the meeting is, I can leave and get to the next meeting. I don't have to stay a few minutes longer. And I can, and I'll own the consequences of that. But for the most part, I think that that's, thinking through how can I manage that situation in a way that I find aligns with my internal values and will be hopefully minimally disruptive, but will also encourage that culture to evolve over time, where if maybe I'm successful in becoming more punctual, some of the people in my direct areas of influence will also become more punctual, which may create a punctuality, momentum that builds over time. And then maybe we actually improve things a bit more collectively, but it kind of can start with my own actions. And I think that's something to really think about, because if it's bothering me for as long as it has, I probably should do something so that I can at least own those behaviors more than just saying, well, I'm just going to have to accept this thing that I don't like. And that's not really my style. I often think there was, I go back, I've long, like, we all have those things that we call ourselves, right? And that we are like, I am a person who is this or does this. One of the ones for me is that I will never forget in high school, we have prom, right? We have junior prom and senior prom. Yeah. And in my high school, we had done, we were in the Chicagoland area, and we did the prom my junior year of high school on this boat, on one of the boats that goes out of Navy Pier, and you have like a little dance area or whatever, and like it was kind of a funky prom thing on this boat. But they had booked this for like 2 or 3 straight years. Like they got a package deal. Okay. Oh, do 2 proms in a row, and I will never forget. At the end of the prom, everybody was like, "Well, that was fine, but there's no way we're doing this again, and like there's no way I'm signing up. I'm not going next year. The food was terrible. It was too expensive. The boat was kind of dumb. It was awful, right? And we're not going to do this next year." I was the only one who didn't go the next year because of what I had said after the first one. And I'm like, I owned that decision, and I'm like, well, yeah, no, I'm not going my senior year because I said that and I meant that and I agree with that. Good. So I'm not going to do that. And everybody else around me just went and did it anyway, because it's like senior prom. Of course you're going to go to senior prom. I'm like,
peer pressure.
I know what it's going to be. I don't need it. And I've long looked back on that, partially sad that I missed my prom that all my friends were at, but partially very proud that I was willing to take that stand and hold firm in a thing that I actually believed in when I said it, and owned that decision, and I followed through. And I've had that pattern throughout my career. It's like, I follow through on things. I'm a person who follows through. I commit. When I commit, I am in it. And so that is a fascinating thing that may not even have any point, but I think we all have those stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves that lead us to these kinds of patterns and decisions that we ultimately take in our careers and how we do. And I think that unpacking some of that is kind of a fun thing to think about. I haven't thought about that in a while, but it's one of those things where it's like, do we have the ability to change? Like, should I have gone back on that decision like everybody else did? Or did it end up becoming a more valuable life lesson versus the fun I would have had at that prom? I don't know. Like, all I know is the one that did happen, and I look back on it. But I now take some element of pride in that. But I think that too, like from your story perspective, right, with some of these challenges that you had with different organizations, whatever, you identified, hey, this is a thing that I need to overcome. I need to do better, and I'm going to create a business to help others do that. That's got to feel pretty good, right? Like that's got to be something that you can like hang your hat on and say, you know what, now I'm making a difference. I'm starting to help people for real in my career.
Yeah, of course. I mean, at the very least, I'm glad that I tried this out, right? Because there's certain insights about driving you won't get until you get behind the wheel, right? And so to be able to try this out, and even if it fails, and I don't plan on letting it fail, but even if it does, to be able to say, hey, you know what? I'm glad I broke out of the status quo and I just didn't go along with my default life plan just because everyone else thought it would be, the right and best thing for me, right? And, it's your decision, right? Whether you said, hey, you know what? I thought about what I said and, I'm going to adjust things, because you still could have gone to prom. I mean, maybe there would be some scrutiny and be like, you're a hypocrite, It's like, well, and yeah, unfortunately, right? The other factor, so 2 things. Well, number one is, peer pressure makes us do a lot of things we wouldn't do otherwise. And so it's not that it goes away. You just need to find the right peers, right? So if you want to run a marathon, hang out with marathoners, right? Same thing with identity. James Clear in Atomic Habits talks about, hey, if you say I'm a smoker, but I'm trying to quit, versus I am now a non-smoker, right? Now when you say, well, this is just who I am, I'm a non-smoker, right? Like identity is a 2-edged sword, because when you're willing to assume an identity you're attaching a lot of yourself and your values to this identity, right? And it may work for a while, and there are identities that you may have to shed, right? Mm-hmm. I am a child, and yet now I'm not an actual father. But some people, some identities are given to us, whether we like them or not. But others, if we realize that we can be intentional about what identities, who we want to become, now you have a very powerful tool in your toolbox as to how you can move yourself forward to say, hey, yeah, I'm a regular exerciser, right? Or now I'm a reader. I'm not just trying to read more books. I'm actually a reader, and readers read books.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I was going to ask you, like, what are some initial things that you can do? And I think you just answered that question around, reframing your own identity, or even just evaluating what are those hats that you choose to wear that you say to yourself about yourself? And then which are those hats that you like and which ones do not? And are you reinforcing those negative behaviors because you've personalize that as part of your identity? So that's an interesting thought. So where do you see, like, what are your plans for your business? Are you anticipating continuing to coach like one-on-one, and do you work with leaders from a like personal development standpoint, or do you focus on career development? And where do you see this this business of yours expanding and growing to over time? What are your goals for that?
Yeah. Thanks for asking that. For right now, right, the one thing I'm happy to tell you guys, I've only been open a year, and the main thing that saved my cash flow this year was private tutoring, right? Like, I didn't have enough clients to cover all these startup costs that you don't realize you have until you start paying them. And you're just like, oh, I need a Canva license, website, insurance. Holy cow. Like, no wonder people charge, hundreds of dollars an hour, because there's all these things you don't see. But yeah, so the goal, it'll always involve one-on-one coaching. That's really, even if the clients obviously don't necessarily have as deep pockets as corporations do, but I think that's where you see the real impact, where people say, yeah, I was scared for my career path. So I actually sat down with my boss and we talked about what skill sets I need to develop so that I don't get caught up in the next round of cuts, right? Mm-hmm. That's a good thing to talk about. And then organizations, whether they need DEI training and say, hey, how do we deal with this, right? There are some inherent things in our subconscious or unconscious biases that are still affecting us, even though we've had plenty of like quote trainings in PowerPoint about what are the right and wrong things to do, right? And then otherwise, let me just do some online courses where people don't even necessarily need me to be present to do the bulk of their own self-improvement. And so the main focus of any workshops I do will be around relationships and conflict, and how to really leverage that conflict as a blessing. And at the same time, right, there are some secondary offers like personal development to say, hey, Jerry, how did you become, a musician? How did you become a better cook? How did you become, a salsa dancer? How did you become, all these other things? And so, to offer my own path that they can learn from it and develop themselves, of course, it's always going to be available.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, one of the strengths that you'll have in your coaching practice is being open and sharing that own personal journey. I think that, being open, being vulnerable, sharing that and helping others learn from it is such a, rich way to impact others that, it's one of the most human and beneficial things that you can do. And I certainly appreciate you, coming on the show today and talking about some of that, and, enlightening our audience about your journey and your offerings. But hopefully, we've all thought a little bit more about our own lives, our own careers, our own passions, and some of the things that we want to work on. I think that's also a very human thing, is that we're never going to be satisfied with who we are or what we are and what we do. And like, we're always trying to improve. And I think that, getting a little bit of help, getting a little bit of different perspective, like so many other contexts, this is a very valuable thing that you'll be doing for your clients and for our audience out there from this show. So, Jerry, thank you so much for being on the show today and helping us all see things from a little bit of a different perspective.
Yeah, you're welcome. If anybody wants to, reach out, just check out the website, adaptingleaders.com. There's a free PDF that you can get on hard conversations. Schedule a complimentary 30-minute call. or just check out my blog where I summarize useful leadership books and offer other life hacks. So yeah.
Awesome.
Feel free to take me up on those. Absolutely.
Yes, please do. And everyone out there, thank you for joining us today. You'll find more information and links in the show notes. Propel your data leadership journey with my book, training, and other services at algman.com. Stay safe during these unusual times and go make an impact.